as I mentioned earlier, we've started a new series here at CWI involved with what it's like to do business in Wisconsin. So at our first meeting, you heard Peter, our earlier meeting this year at Discovery World, you heard Peter Fagan talk about being the president and general manager of the Bucks and his experiences in doing business here. And today I'm delighted to introduce Tim Sullivan to provide his experience in doing business in Wisconsin. Tim and I have worked together for a number of years now on behalf of the St. Anne's Center for Intergenerational Care. It's located on the south side of Milwaukee, and we just put a new building on the north side of Milwaukee. St. Anne's is really a unique intergenerational model that cares for people of all ages, and St. Anne's has just so greatly benefited from Tim's hard work, his wisdom, and his personal generosity. But we're not here to talk about St. Anne's today. We've really, we've asked him to focus on what it's like for him to have done business in Wisconsin. Tim has probably the long biography that Carl does. So if I can provide a summary of that for you this morning. Tim is both a business leader and a community leader. On the business side, he served as president and CEO of major manufacturing corporations. We're all familiar with Tim from his experience at Bucyrus International. He also had leadership positions at United Container Machinery, Gardner Denver, and now he is the CEO of the REV Group. Tim is committed to the community in which he lives. In addition to the St. Anne's board, Tim also serves on the board of directors of Aurora Healthcare, the Bucyrus Foundation, Carroll University, MMAC, and the United Way of Greater Milwaukee. Tim also served as chair of the Governor's Council for Workforce Investment and the Council for College and Workforce Investment. He is the author of what we fondly call the Tim Sullivan Report, which is really the road ahead restoring Wisconsin's workforce development. We've asked him to share his thoughts with us today about what he's learned from his more than 2 decades of experience as a corporate and civic leader here in Wisconsin, and what prompted Tim to move the headquarters of both Gardner Denver and the REV Group from other states here to Wisconsin. So Tim, welcome to Competitive Wisconsin this morning.
Since you're taping, I will stay stationary, relatively stationary. It's great being back in Wisconsin, and I've effectively been gone for about 3 years. I left to go to Philadelphia 3 years ago to run Gardner Denver. That was their headquarters at the time. Gardner Denver, a very old, prestigious, iconic American company. Gardner Denver was the company that actually developed the governor to control steam power. So when I was running Bucyrus, we had started in 1880. The precursor that was Gardner Denver that actually controlled the steam power that we use for our excavators in 1880. So I'm kind of a sucker for American iconic companies, especially manufacturers. So I enjoyed my tenure there. It was, I went there really to turn the company around. It had its worst performance in 30 years. The CEO had been released. The company was not doing well, and I went to run it in Philadelphia. I'm a Wisconsinite. Philadelphia is a tough place to run a company from. The good news about Wisconsin, and going back 3 years ago, or 2.5 years ago now, when I brought the headquarters from Philadelphia to Milwaukee and Wisconsin, we have an incredible reputation as a base of manufacturing in the United States of America. We are sometimes our worst critics, and we don't really see ourselves as much from the inside, but when you get outside and you start looking in, you really understand the true attributes of our state. We have an incredible reputation. We tend to beat ourselves up a little bit because we're always talking about things like workforce development. We don't do this right, we don't do that right. We're always self-critical of ourselves, probably more than I think in other regions and states in the United States. It was a well understood decision that I made. I brought Gardner Denver back. It was a fairly quick turnaround. We had gone from the worst performing company in 30 years to the best performance in 30 years, in literally a 12-month period of time. I turned the company over to Pete Wallace, a Milwaukeean, and I stepped aside. I felt I had accomplished what I wanted, and we were hoping to create a lot of good jobs in the state of Wisconsin. Almost immediately after the announcement of resignation, I was recruited by a private equity group that was forming a new company. This was not an iconic brand, it was really kind of a new company, but it was a culmination of several different brands. I brought some slides, I'll show you a few things of what we do, because that's what I do these days, is run this company. It's a great company, it's just really getting started. The company was based in Orlando, Florida. When I joined the company 18 months ago, we had 14 manufacturing locations, none in Wisconsin. Half of those, though, in Midwestern states. We just completed an acquisition yesterday. Now we have 16 manufacturing locations, and we have 17 service centers around the country. This company will grow rapidly through acquisition, and I'll talk a little bit about that as well. But commuting to Orlando for 18 months was kind of a tough thing. Nothing against Orlando, Florida. Mickey Mouse loves it. It's the home of Mickey. But every Monday morning that I wasn't staying weekends down in Orlando, I would get up and get on the 6 o'clock flight, direct flight from Milwaukee, with all the little kids going to Disney World. And trust me, all I wanted to do was sleep on that plane going down to Orlando. But when you have a plane full of kids, they're all excited about going to see Mickey. It's not a very quiet flight. It's a great place to actually commute in and out of, because I think there's direct flights from every city in the United States of America to go to the home of Mickey. It is really a bad place, though, for corporate headquarters. In Orlando would not like me saying that, but it's not really geared for a business center. It's not a manufacturing center. It's an entertainment center. So when I made the decision about 4 months ago now that we would move the headquarters back to Wisconsin, it was interesting. Again, it was the second experience that I had of bringing a headquarters to Wisconsin. And the owners of our company, it's a privately held company today, will be taking the company public in about 8 months, probably January, February of next year. When I went to New York and I announced to the owners that I wanted to take the headquarters to Wisconsin, they said, "Oh yes, of course. It's the base of manufacturing in the United States of America. Of course we understand that. It's a great move." Again, a second point of fact where we are seen as the manufacturing center of the United States, or certainly one of the major manufacturing centers of America, and we're sometimes our own worst critics. And I think that's something that we should embrace and we should talk about as we go forward. This goes back also, and in all fairness, why I did both of these moves. When our company was sold to Caterpillar, it was announced in November of 2010. I had lunch that day with Tim Sheehy, the head of MMAC in Milwaukee, and I was actually on the board at the time. I think I might have even been chairing at that time. But I had lunch with Tim, and he said, "I gotta tell you, this is great news." He said, "I'm a shareholder." He said, "I just made a bunch of money." And he said, "Your shareholders have to be happy with this move." And I said, "Yeah, well, you know, they're all making a lot of money, so they are happy." He said, though, he got quiet, he said, "But this is really a bad situation." He said, in a period of 10 days now, we've lost 3 corporate headquarters in the city of Milwaukee. Previous to our announcement, Laddish had just announced that they had sold out to a company in the UK, and the week before that, Marsh & Yosley had announced that they had sold out to BMO Harris. And as you know, both of those headquarters are no longer in Milwaukee or in Wisconsin. And his comment was, he said, "You know, when a community in a state loses a headquarters, it's really a death blow. Because I liked your BBOL 3, one of your objectives is to bring in and promote high-paying jobs. We will have 50 of the highest paid employees in our company living in Wisconsin, within the next 12 months as we start to ramp up our population of our headquarters in Milwaukee. Those are important aspects of a community. That's an important aspect of a state's economy. It also adds the prestigious aspects of what we do as being known as a manufacturing state. I was asked, do we have any manufacturing in Wisconsin? We don't. We have 16 locations, and none of them are in Wisconsin. I do really want to bring the first manufacturing facility to Wisconsin. And I told our friends at WEDC that Wisconsin's #1 on the list if we create a manufacturing center. And again, I'll show you what we do. But it's important. It's really important for the state. It's important for a community like Milwaukee. So when I announced I was bringing REV, the REV group, to Milwaukee, he says, "You're 2 for 2. He said, "You've made up for what you did selling the company to Caterpillar." And he said, "You know what? If you live long enough, you might be able to pull off the hat trick." And I said, "Well, I don't know about that. But who knows? I don't plan on retiring anytime soon." Let me show you just a little bit about the REV group, who we are. And then I also want to talk about, Be Bold 3, because I was intimately involved in Be Bold 2, because a report that I was working on at that point in time, and Bill, you remember that, Jim, you do, that we were kind of running in parallel, and we wanted to make sure that we didn't have redundancy in the reports. We wanted to make sure they were complementary. They were, because we were all investigating some of the same facts. But I want to talk, too, about how that report, I think, still remains relevant, and how I think you should be looking at it and reading it again as you're working through Be Bold 3. But let me just talk briefly about REV. It's we're a fun company. It's actually, again, some iconic brands to some extent, but not steam engines and steam control governors and that sort of thing. We have 3 basic areas of concentration. We build specialty vehicles, and somebody says, "Well, that's not too exciting." It is exciting. Specialty vehicles is a really interesting industry. If you look at all of them, they're all kind of different and special. We're kind of in between a lot of different things. The big automobile manufacturers don't want to do these things. And the real problem that you do have is, over time, these tended to be family businesses that grew up into really kind of niche areas around the country. I'll give you an example. Fire trucks. We built a product called Emergency One. We were the #1 provider of fire trucks until about 2003, 2004, in this company called Pierce. Happens to be built in Appleton, Wisconsin, a good Wisconsin company, part of Oshkosh Truck. They currently are #1, or they were until yesterday. They're a competitor. Emergency One and a company we purchased yesterday, a company called KME, now become very, very close to the capacity and the market shares of Pierce. And we will continue to do that. I'll talk a little bit about that strategy. But it's interesting, if you look at Pierce, you look at what we do, and there's one other company called Rosenbauer, which is an Austrian company that actually manufactures fire trucks in North Dakota and Minnesota. Those are the 3 big fire truck companies in the United States. But there are 23 fire truck manufacturers in the United States. So if you look at an area like Pittsburgh, there's a family business that makes fire trucks in southeastern Pittsburgh. We don't sell in southeastern Pittsburgh. They buy the products that are made there locally. If you look at all the very specialty vehicle manufacturers, they tend to be very small, not very integrated, and fairly convoluted as far as how they approach the marketplace. So the strategy of the owners that own the REV group was, we need to start to consolidate into the specialty vehicle market. The reason I'm excited about this is, first of all, we're bringing a very high level of professionalism into kind of a mom and pop type of network of various specialty manufacturing companies. We plan to consolidate, continue to consolidate. So we will not only be buying companies on a regular basis, so we'll have a lot of inorganic growth. We're also growing what we do. If you look at the breakdown, these are some of the larger groups. We make school buses. We're the largest manufacturer of Type A school buses, which are the small ones. We make those South Hutchinson, Kansas. Shuttle buses, we have 4 plants. We're the #1 provider of shuttle buses. RVs, we actually make RVs too. We bought 4 companies out of bankruptcy. Ironically, those are probably the 4 best known. If you're an RV, anybody RV enthusiast in here? Not really. Yeah. My wife's kind of the same way. She said slumming it for her is a 4-star hotel, not an RV. So,
Yeah.
but we actually own American Coach, Fleetwood, Holiday Rambler, which at one point in time was owned by Harley Davidson, and Monaco. And those are the 4 probably most iconic brands in RVs. We have the highest number of RVs on the highway today, and that's why we're building the service centers, because service centers are kind of out there for those types of products. I won't go through all that. This is just some of the types of things we do. We have 300,000 vehicles on the road. We make approximately 20,000 vehicles a year. That's more than most smaller size automobile manufacturers. On an LTM or last 12-month basis, we were $1.7 billion in revenue. We're already up to $2.2 billion in revenue this year. I restructured the company last year, moving the headquarters here, kind of redoing some different things. We did $93 million worth of EBITDA earnings last year. On the last 12 months, we're actually on a pace for 120. We will hit 200 next year. So this thing, I tell our young people that we're hiring here for our headquarters in Milwaukee. I said we're building a rocket ship, and the rocket ship's already kind of put together. Now we're just ready to launch this thing. So the growth is going to get extremely rapid, quick, with a lot of good earnings as we move forward now. The 3 groupings we have are commercial, so it's buses, and we build transit buses too. It's interesting, when we were talking about where we're going to move the headquarters, Milwaukee in Wisconsin was not necessarily a slam dunk, primarily due to the fact that our 14 locations, now 16, we can't get to any of them from Mitchell Airport. Can't. You have to basically go through someplace. We're in garden spots like Jefferson, North Carolina, South Hutchinson, Kansas, Salina, Kansas, Longview, Texas, Columbus, Ohio, but you can't get there from here on a direct flight. Imlay City, Michigan. These are places that are very close to some very nice airports, but not from Milwaukee. Chicago, yes. So we did really take a hard look at Chicago. Again, I'm one person. I happen to be Wisconsinite. I had no other Wisconsinites working in the company. Actually, I had one. I had one young lady that was in Orlando headquarters from Milton, Wisconsin. She went south, and she's still trying to decide if she's going to come back or not. I think she will. But if you look at Chicago, we had 2 things. Chicago had 2 things going for them. Number 1, transport. We could get almost anywhere very quickly, back and forth, in the same day. The other thing that we had in Chicago, we own the city of Chicago. Every fire truck in Chicago is ours. Every ambulance in Chicago is ours. Every transit bus in Chicago is ours. Every shuttle bus is ours. All the terminal trucks that are used at UPS and FedEx in Chicago are ours. So our owner is sitting there saying, and why aren't you going to Chicago? I said, well, because there's opportunity in Wisconsin. I said, we have to convert Milwaukee to our fire trucks. We do have all the ambulances in Milwaukee. About 60% of the ambulance service in the United States is subcontracted. So Bell, and the Milwaukeeans here, Bell, those are all our ambulances. We own the city of New York, now on 2 fronts. We had all the ambulances in New York, now we have all the fire trucks with our acquisition that we made yesterday. So it wasn't necessarily a slam dunk. It didn't necessarily make complete sense to come to Milwaukee, except for the fact that we had great support from WEDC, we had great support from the city, and I think, again, this is very important to remember. It was very, very easy for us to recruit for our headquarters. And why is that? Well, we're a manufacturing state. Now, if you think that someone that can work in a headquarters that has entertainment in their background, like Orlando, you think that a skill set as something like financial management or a CFO position or a general counsel position, it crosses over a lot of different companies. That's not exactly true. I think people that are educated and work in manufacturing, even at a very senior level in companies, have a skill set that they've gained over time, and I can already see it from the people that we've recruited here in Wisconsin. These are people that either have been educated in manufacturing or have worked in manufacturing, and they have a completely different perspective on what we do as a manufacturer versus somebody else who was recruited off the street in Orlando, Florida. So it works all the way down the food chain when you're talking about different skill sets. And again, never forget the fact that we are a manufacturing state. I can't remember the statistics, I haven't seen them for about 4 years, but when the state of Michigan met its demise with the automobile industry going down, we actually on a per capita basis became #1 in the country. I still think we're #1 or #2 from a manufacturing standpoint as far as on a per capita basis, the number of people that are involved in manufacturing. So the 3 divisions, fire and emergency, recreation. I have a few more slides here. I won't bore you with these. This is our rundown on our what we call our commercial division. We have real strong share positions, but we think there's more to be done to grow these segments and expand them. Fire and emergency, we have 70% of the ambulances in the United States we manufacture. So that's a big market share for us, and now we're kind of neck and neck with Pierce on the fire. They refer to that as fire apparatus. I call it fire trucks, but fire apparatus. And then the RVs. In our RV location, we're building 2 new plants in Decatur, Indiana. We have 1 plant, and our business is starting to boom because these brands are now back up and becoming vibrant again. We're actually building 2 new plants, almost 1 million square feet of manufacturing capability in Decatur, Indiana, which is right on the Ohio border. Great labor pool. That's why we're doing it, which I'll talk about in just a minute. Okay, just some breakdown on the revenue, where they come from. A lot of municipalities obviously buy our things, consumers, private contractors, again, a lot of the ambulance service, a lot of the bus services. Chicago, they subcontract out their transit buses. They don't operate them. It's a very common thing to happen in a lot of municipalities. We're very domestic centric, but we will be announcing later this week an acquisition in Brazil of all places. I think they're impeaching somebody down there right now, but we like to go into countries that are in turmoil. What is it, the old adage, buy low, sell high? We're buying low. Things are real cheap right now in Brazil, as you can imagine. It's just some trends that we've got there, and it's we're on a trend. That the important one is our earnings. We'll be at 120, and with the IPO, keep in mind, I don't know what the sticker or the ticker will be, but REV, keep an eye for that one next January. Might not be a bad investment. This thing is a rocket ship. We're going to build this thing quickly. And then just some more statistics about some of our strengths and what we do around the now it's 16 manufacturing plants and 20,000. That 20,000 vehicles will be about 30,000 in about 18 months. So it's growing quickly. And some of the other things that we've created that were not done before, we have our own finance company now. We finance all of our vehicles, and that's also helping on market share. Aftermarket spare parts, it's interesting. In the specialty vehicle business, if you take a car in, you can get your car serviced pretty easily from a dealer. You can't really with specialty vehicles. That's why we're building this network out there. When you take your car in for service, you just kind of leave your wallet or your purse on the counter as you walk out because they make a lot of money on parts and service. They don't know how to make money on parts and service in our industry, but we know how to make money. So we're actually going to be growing that business very rapidly. Good access in our international development. And then just some of the reasons why we're going to be talking to people about why they should be investing in our company when we go public. And I think that's enough. I think that's good. Let me talk a little bit about Wisconsin. I think Be Bold 2/3. I can't talk to people unless I talk about workforce development, and I think it's extremely important. It's what every state talks about, and I think there's some missing links in a lot of the things that we talk around in workforce development. And when I went back, I was up last night. I had to go look at the report. I haven't looked at it for about 4 years. I really haven't. It's a pretty good report. I don't know if you read it, but it's a good report. What's interesting about this report, what's really interesting about this report is I think most of this had more play in other states than our own state. Now, having said that, when B-Bold 2 was published and this report was published, there was some legislative action taken on some of the recommendations from both those reports. And they were good. They were good things. Other states took some of the bolder recommendations out of this report and ran with them. When we did this report, this is interesting, and not a lot of this got into the report, but sometime in the 1980s, during the REV administration, the American dream shifted from a good paying job to a 4-year college education. That's when it happened. That's when it happened. I don't know why, but that's when it happened. And it hasn't changed since then. When we were researching the report, I'm not sure what we have as far as numbers of students in the technical colleges now, but back then I think it was about 90, 91,000, something like that.
People
Yeah.
at that time?
Yeah.
Closer to 340 maybe?
Yeah, I think those were, I was thinking maybe full-time or whatever.
Right.
This was something that floored us when we were doing the research. At that point in time, 38,000 that were in our technical college system already had a 4-year degree. They just couldn't get jobs. Now, I was warned that, no, just don't take that as face value, because some of them are actually back getting additional type of training for the jobs that they are in, even though they had a 4-year degree, some things in healthcare and that sort of thing. But 38,000 already had a 4-year degree, so a certain percentage of those, I don't know what it was, it was hard, we'd have to interview and find out each one and every one, what they were in there for, but 38,000 already had a 4-year degree. And I mentioned that to the governor at the time. I said, you know, as a taxpayer, we're doing ourselves a major injustice. I said, we made a 4-year degree the American dream. They've got a 4-year degree, but they can't get a job. Because 70% of the jobs in the state of Wisconsin back then required a 1, a 2-year degree, or no degree, post-secondary education. They were back trying to get a skill set to get a job. Now, why is that an issue for taxpayers? Well, it's double trouble. I mean, we're subsidizing the UW system with our tax money. We're subsidizing our technical college with our tax money. It was about 3 years ago, 2 years ago, the state of Tennessee reverted back and made all their technical colleges free. For the same reason, because of the same demographic facts in the state of Wisconsin, Tennessee, the bulk of their jobs were in, areas that did not require a 4-year degree, and they had the same issue as we had, where they were basically paying twice for people to get the right skills training that they need to get into those jobs that did not require a 4-year degree. They made a very bold move. Now, I actually called the governor when that happened. I said, you see what Tennessee did? He goes, yep. I said, you should think about that. He goes, never going to happen in Wisconsin. He didn't believe in it. There's a lot of arguments why you wouldn't do that, but I guess that was just one example of other states that kind of read this, checked out what we do, and decided to take some bold action. The other thing that we put in the report, and this was at the governor's request, we put in the very back something called other considerations. He didn't make me take them out of the report. He said, I'd never make you do that, but I effectively want them out of the report. Put them in the back as other considerations or future considerations, and we did. There were 3 things that he asked me to take out. The first thing was that over 30 states, I can't remember the exact number, 36, 37 states, fund workforce development in their state budgets. At that point in time, we funded 0. We were one of the few states that had no money in the state budget for workforce development, period. What most states did is they took a percentage of the unemployment insurance that they charged employers, and they put that into their state budgets for state funding for workforce development. We recommended in the report 0.2% to go towards, from unemployment insurance that's collected every year from employers, and put a percentage of that into workforce development and make that part of the state budget. We said that would be a fairly painless way to actually fund workforce development. I said, it's not our idea. That's what over 30 states do. So why don't we do it? The other thing that we put in the report was that if we're going to recruit workers to the state of Wisconsin, I've got the exact problem right now, the exact problem. Our taxes are perceived to be egregious. Taxes are taxes, right? I mean, you need a tax base to fund what we do as a state. Now, the state of Florida doesn't have snow removal. They don't have to buy salt. They have to do some of those things, but they have other things that they have to fund. At the end of the day, you need X amount of dollars to fund what we do as a state. And there's a lot of different ways to slice that pie up. One of the things that we said is we're not suggesting any new taxes, but to recalibrate the taxes. We have some of the highest property taxes and the highest state income tax of any states in the United States of America, and I can't remember exactly the number, but we're really in the top, 3 or 4 percentile as far as those percentages are concerned. Where we have the lowest sales tax on a state-by-state basis. So we said, why don't we lower the property taxes, lower the personal income taxes, and increase the sales tax? I said, my wife tries very hard to save the state of Wisconsin economy every year with sales tax. And the people that are paying, they're happy to pay that sales tax. It's an invisible tax. How many people actually say, when they go to the state of Illinois, what tax am I paying here? You pay the bill and you walk out. How about in the city of Chicago, 13%? 5 here, right? But we have property taxes that are high, we have state income taxes high. We are a shrinking state. I thought the statistics were just updated 2 weeks ago. I think we're in the top 10 or top 15 for sure as states that are losing population, but it's even worse than that. How many of our residents in the state of Wisconsin actually spend half their time south? And they do that for a reason, so they don't have to pay our state tax, our taxes. So they go to Florida, they go to Arizona. I remember when Jim Doe was governor, when I first started chairing the Council for Workforce Investment, I had a session with Jim. It was literally the day after the Packers had been playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And he said, did you see that Packer game yesterday? I said, yeah. He says, isn't it great how those Wisconsinites travel to support their team? I said, Jim, they live there. They didn't travel, they live in Tampa. They live in Florida. It's a real blow to our economy with these people gone. 6 months and 1 day every year, or whatever the requirements are, I wouldn't know. I haven't gone there. But think about that. So we have a shrinking population, and we have that income leaving the state because of the way we tax ourselves. So we put it in the report as another consideration because, as you know, this governor doesn't like to talk about tax. But talking to the people that know something about this, it's a deterrent to recruit people to the state of Wisconsin. I'm trying to do it right now to bring people in from Orlando. Weather really has nothing to do with it. It really doesn't. These people love working for REV. They see the growth of the company, they see this company's going to be public. Then they look at what the property taxes are, what the state income tax is. Weather doesn't help, but that's 3 or 4 months of the year. Can't get them excited. We're going to have to pay up. We're going to have to pay up to bring them from Florida. And quite frankly, that's not what we want to do. We don't want to be paying up. So we're going to get the girl from Milton. She's great, by the way. Her parents still live in Milton. She'll come. Begrudgingly, we'll probably have to give her a raise. But the rest of them don't want to come. Every company that tries to recruit to bring people into Wisconsin, whether fair or not, it's a bad perception that we do have. The business tax climate is excellent. But these things slow us down from a standpoint of recruitment. And it's part of Bold 3. How are we going to recruit? It's in the other consideration, just kind of, you can copy it.
I'll read it.
Last thing that was in other considerations, and this is a big deal. There's a lot of, I looked at this last night, there's a lot of good stats in there. Immigration. We're a manufacturing state. Now think back how manufacturing developed in the state of Wisconsin. Who did the manufacturing jobs? And we gotta have an adult conversation about this and stop trying to pretend that we're gonna get, our sons and daughters on the manufacturing floor. It's just not gonna happen. We gotta give up. It's just not gonna happen. Especially millennials, it's just not gonna happen. You know, the people that did the manufacturing jobs were the people that were willing to do anything for an income. Think back, it was the Irish, it was the Italians. In South Milwaukee, it was the Polish and the German immigrants. Immigrants, the people right off the boat, those are the people that went to the manufacturing jobs. We did the stats, the dairy industry. Where would the dairy industry be without the Hispanic population in the state of Wisconsin? Where would manufacturing be in Wausau without the Hmong population? Where would manufacturing be in southeast Wisconsin without the Hispanic population? We actually had to start a new plant in Texas because we couldn't get enough workers for a $250 million expansion of our plant in South Milwaukee. It's how this country was developed. It's how it has to continue to develop. That's why my eyes glaze over when I get these people up on the stump yelling and screaming about immigration, this and that and everything else. What's interesting, it's in the report, the governor didn't want it in the report, he really didn't. But I told him, he said, this is a federal issue, not a state issue. I said, no, you're wrong. You're absolutely wrong. We cited 6 states in the upper Midwest that had departments in the state budget that actually were recruiting immigrants to the state. And then immigrants can be a lot of different things. It could be people that are living in other states that were immigrants from other countries, but you need them to come into that manufacturing base. That's where we need them to be. And if we think we're going to fool ourselves into believing that we can populate our factory floors with our kids, or our cousins, or our grandkids, it's just not going to happen. I just think it's not going to happen. It never has. Never did. For generations, it's never has. So I think we have to look at things completely differently. If you look in here, the statistics are really telling. The lack of immigrants that either we have coming into our state, that own businesses, that are really trying to push the needle forward. Food processing, I find that interesting. Go to Patrick Cudahy in Cudahy, Wisconsin. 85% of the people working in food processing in Patrick Cudahy are Hispanic. You know, so anyway, these were other considerations. These are things that we gotta be a little bit more bolder on. You know, I think we've got to recruit. If you really want higher paying jobs, recruit headquarters like ourselves. We're bringing 50 of the highest paid jobs in our company to Wisconsin. And those are very high paying jobs. Except for mine, I don't make much. So I take minimum wage. We have to look at how we're going to meaningfully fund workforce development. If we're going to rely 100% on Fed money, you're not going to move the needle. Not going to happen. And again, I thought we came out with a pretty good scheme that's almost painless. I mean, it's an easy one for the legislature to take, yeah, okay, we'll just allocate 0.2%. I can't remember, again, it's been 4 years, but the number was meaningful. And I'm going to say, I think it was, at that point in time, it was like $25 million a year, it might even been more, that would have funded workforce development at 0.2% of what employers pay into the unemployment insurance in the state of Wisconsin, which is usually funded very, very well. And then immigration. We really, it's not a federal issue, it's a state issue. Quite frankly, in many areas, it's a regional issue. Go to Pittsburgh, see what they do in Pittsburgh. It's a city issue. They get it. They get it in places like Pittsburgh that are another manufacturing base. Anyway, it's great to be back in Wisconsin. I've been living out for 3 years. I'm happy to be back in Milwaukee. I'm happy to sleep in my bed on weekends because I missed a lot of those too. It's a great place for manufacturing. We have, believe it or not, a great reputation outside this state. I think we have to look at ourselves, maybe be a little less critical and promote things that are good. We have great health care, but remember, health care is a provider. It's not going to be a growing industry if the state is shrinking. We need to have the state growing in population because health care can be even better. Food processing is a great place to focus. I think that's one area that we can grow in our state. And don't give up on manufacturing. We're still a manufacturing state and we have a great reputation.